Welcome back to the deep dive. Really excited about today's session. We're digging into something pretty unique. It's a collection called Dynaxiom Entries 3261-3270. Now, dynaxioms, what are they? Well, think of them like these super condensed thoughts, maybe observations, but maybe more like algorithmic truths. They're designed to cut through complexity, reveal fundamental patterns about us, about our world. So our mission today is to unpack these, find the deeper stuff hidden inside, and see what they tell us about knowledge, human nature, the world we're living in.
Yeah, and what's really striking is how these tiny entries, they just open up huge ideas. They connect simple statements to really profound concepts and to our everyday lives, too. Helps you make sense of yourself, society, without wading through tons of jargon. It's kind of a shortcut, actually, to getting some real aha moments.
Okay, let's jump right in then. How about we start with our social selves? Dynaxiom 3268 gets right to it. It says, the ultimate intimacy is you. Only you know you're you. People might never see the you want them to. That really stops you for a second, doesn't it? That core part of you that only you get.
Oh, absolutely. It highlights that, that deep personal knowing we all have. But the kicker is that gap, the potential disconnect between who you are inside or who you want to be and how other people actually see you. And that gap, it can be surprisingly wide. And the fallout from that affects self-worth, trust, how we read others.
Yeah.
It's a constant negotiation, really.
That's a really important point. And speaking of connecting, or maybe how we connect, Dynaxiom 3262 zooms right in on this basic human need. It suggests that most of us spend our time and energy just trying to feel safe and accepted, by our tribe or clan. And that's the groundwork for basically everything else we do. You got to fit in before you can really act.
Yes, exactly. And the source material actually gives us some fascinating brain science on this. It's not just a feeling. Patricia Churchland's work, for instance, shows our brains are literally physically wired for this stuff. Those neurochemicals like vasopressin, oxytocin, they're not just for bonding. They make social acceptance feel good, essential even. And being rejected, well, that's not just sad, it's biologically painful. Your brain treats it like a physical injury almost. And then Scott Atran's research, wow, it takes it even further. He talks about how group pressure can literally change how you perceive reality. He mentions individuals appearing to sort of capitulate to conformity by recalibrating in parts of the brain dedicated to visual processing. So it's not just changing your mind.
Wait, so you might actually see things differently.
That's the implication. Your brain might actually tweak its own processing to align with the group. It's like deep-level conformity, possibly without you even knowing it's happening.
That is
Yeah.
Wow. That link between our brains and this tribal pull is just incredibly strong. So, okay, if this drive is so fundamental, this need for acceptance, this neurological conformity, how does that play out on a bigger scale, like in society?
Well, that ties neatly into Dynaxiom 3270, actually. It says, you know you're in a democracy or moving towards one when things seem chaotic. Now, the source presents this perspective as, well, maybe hopeful. Think about it. In really authoritarian places, like the source mentions North Korea, there's often a lack of visible chaos, right? The source suggests the people there have sort of given in, they've supplicated to the leader, maybe partly because they don't know about democracy or they've been, maybe brainwashed into thinking it's bad.
Okay.
So the chaos we sometimes see in democracies, it could just be the messy sound of different people actually thinking for themselves, disagreeing, which you just don't get when everyone's aligned, perhaps even neurologically, to one single view.
That's a really interesting way to frame chaos. Makes you think. Okay, maybe a topic for another time is where that line is between healthy chaos and just destructive noise. But for now, let's switch gears a bit. We've talked about the social self, the wiring. What about knowledge itself, especially now in this digital world? Dynaxiom 3261 has a really simple but deep take. The new just is.
Yeah, this one unpacks innovation in a really interesting way. It's basically saying that new isn't just about inventing something cool. It's about whether people actually adopt it. Widespread acceptance is what makes something truly new. Think about QR codes. They were around for ages, right?
Right, yeah.
But they only really became new, like indispensable, when the pandemic hit and suddenly everyone had to use them. It wasn't the tech changing, it was the acceptance level.
That's a perfect example. Okay, and building on that, Dynaxiom 3263 draws this really important line between what you truly know, like understand deeply, and what the source calls factoid knowledge. You know those little isolated bits you look up online out of curiosity, but maybe you don't really connect to anything else?
Right. And look, collecting lots of factoids, it can make you knowledgeable about a lot of different things. But the source stresses the crucial part is connecting them, being able to recall them when needed, and really getting the context. Otherwise, they're just trivia bits floating around. And this connects to a really modern worry the source brings up about, well, reliability. It says, now, with artificial intelligence running on the internet, all the searches we do are probably suspect because of possible inaccuracies. We're getting summaries of the scrapings of websites, not the sites themselves. This is what it calls the curse of factoids. You risk getting wrong info served up neatly, and it becomes harder to pass on what you actually intended to share because the pipeline itself might be flawed.
Yeah, like getting an AI summary that misses a key ingredient in a recipe.
Exactly. And you don't know until the whole thing fails because you didn't check the original source.
That really makes a case for sustained learning, doesn't it? Which Dynaxiom 3267 touches on. Quote, if you've always read and written a bit about history, then you'll always know a bit about history. It suggests that real understanding, seeing the patterns, that comes from sticking with something over time, not just grabbing those fragmented factoids from the news cycle. It's about depth, right? Seeing the whole picture.
Yeah, depth over just scattered breadth. And then there's this really poignant one, Dynaxiom 3264. Most of us go through life not knowing what's been lost.
Yeah.
It speaks to this kind of generational forgetting. After 3 or 4 generations pass, there just aren't many people left who can tell you what it was really like back then in their early adult years. So much lived experience just vanishes.
Oh, definitely.
The source does mention YouTube, interestingly. Could it become a sort of archive? Maybe.
Yeah.
But it also says, not a sure thing.
That hits home. I always wish I'd asked my grandparents more. You really feel that loss of firsthand knowledge? Okay, so if knowledge is getting trickier, more fragmented, what about acting? Acting on what we know or maybe who we want to become. Dynaxiom 3266 brings it back to us personally. Waking up and wanting to be something also includes waking up and having to do something.
Yeah, and this sounds simple, but it's quite deep. It connects that internal feeling, that desire or aspiration, directly to the need for actual concrete action. The real insight isn't just do something. It's acknowledging the inertia, right? The thing that stops us. It's a reminder that wanting is the easy part. The doing takes that daily effort, pushing against the drag, just showing up.
Showing up, yeah. And that idea of doing versus just wanting or being, it makes me think about artists. How does this apply to them? And Dynaxiom 3265 has this fascinating take on artists and time. It says artists have to be of the century or even the following century, but they also need to know the last century. It gives this example of needing to grasp what it was like coming of age during, say, the Depression and the whole vibe, the zeitgeist. For the next 30 years, like 1930 to 1970, it really sparks your imagination. Like, what will it be like coming of age in, say, 2130?
That really nails the artist's challenge, doesn't it? They need this sort of double vision, looking forward, almost like prophets, but also being deeply anchored in history. You have to understand the past, the human condition, the archetypes, what's been done to genuinely create something new for the future, see the past currents to maybe predict future tides,
That's a heavy lift, a powerful combination, though. Okay, finally, let's talk about tools, technology. Dynaxiom 3269 sums up our often tricky relationship with them. If you don't find interesting and positive uses for tools, the tools wind up using you.
Right. The argument here is that just ignoring or dismissing new tech doesn't make it go away. It actually just lets it run wild without any direction. But if you proactively engage with it, find those positive, interesting ways to use it, then you put it back on the leash, so to speak. It's about claiming your agency, choosing how the tool serves a purpose, instead of just letting it dictate your attention or habits passively. And the source uses deepfakes as a specific example here. It notes, we can make deepfakes just as entertainment, but it corrupts the better uses for tools. Then it asks, but is there really any good use for deepfakes beyond entertainment? Even if it's used in filmmaking, art, it's still kind of in that entertainment zone. The worry seems to be less about the tool itself and more about maybe how it primarily gets used and what effect that has. Does it make us less critical?
That connects straight back to Neil Postman, doesn't it? His warning from way back in the 80s about amusing ourselves to death. It's a stark reminder that if we're not intentional, our tools can easily distract us from deeper things. They end up using us. So there we have it, from our inner social wiring and the shifting sands of knowledge today to the link between wanting and doing and this complex dance with our tools. These Dynaxiom entries, 3261 to 3270, they really pack a punch. Tiny statements, but huge reflections on us, on knowledge, on technology, society, everything.
Absolutely. And the hope really is that exploring these kinds of underlying dynamics helps you cut through the noise a bit, helps you spot the patterns, make maybe more nuanced sense of the world flying at you.
So the big question then, what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Well, here's a thought to maybe chew on. Given how deeply wired we seem to be for that tribal acceptance, and how easily our perception might be swayed by the group or even by, faulty factoids from our amazing new tools, how might you consciously, intentionally build spaces or habits that encourage truly independent thinking? How do you foster genuinely new perspectives that aren't just echoing the group or accepting what just is, but are truly yours, maybe even uncoerced?
That is a fantastic question to end on. Really makes you think. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Definitely keep exploring these ideas.